Hey there, I'm Brandon, and this is the Dirt Church Devotional. You know, there's a story in the Bible, it's in a couple of different places, about a time that Jesus shed the mellow persona that so many people view him with, and he went a little bit crazy. He was kicking over tables, and he made a whip, and he was driving people out of the temple. He was upset because they were disrespecting the temple. In fact, he said these words. He said, "It's written, my house will be a house of prayer for the nations, but you have turned it into a den of robbers." And that ticked him off. And the disciples, it says, they later realized that it had been written that zeal for your house will consume me. Jesus was zealous for the temple, and he was upset that it was being misused. Why? Because the temple represented God's presence among the people. And the temple was to be a place where people could come and be in God's presence and meet with him and share their needs and cry out to him. And it wasn't just that they could pray for the other nations, but it would be a place where the other nations were welcome to come in. But because of greed, because of whatever, they had totally neglected the intentional purpose of the temple, and they were turning it into a den of robbers. But can I tell you something? The story goes a little bit deeper. You see, in reality, Jesus isn't all that concerned. I mean, he was and he is, but he's not that concerned about brick and mortar buildings. It wasn't for the temple that he died and rose again. In fact, when his disciples were telling him, "Hey, look at these beautiful buildings at the temple," Jesus kind of nonchalantly said, "Hey, look at this. They're all going to be knocked over." And he didn't really seem to care. He said, "Not one stone's going to stay on top of another." And that didn't upset him so much. You go, why? Well, if you go into 1 Corinthians, we're told that now that Jesus has risen from the dead, we, believers, are the temple of the Holy Ghost. We are wherein he dwells, and we are to be that representative in the community to the lost. We are to be ones to whom the lost, the nations would come and say, "Hey, can you pray for me? Hey, I need what you've got." But if we are misusing ourselves, if we are abusing ourselves or allowing ourselves to be abused, if we're mistreating our bodies, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't look good. You know, and some will say, "Oh yeah, we should eat right, diet and exercise, and don't drink and don't do drugs and don't smoke and don't do." True. But you know, no matter what you eat, you're going to die one of these days. And even Paul wrote to Timothy, his young friend, and said, "Look, physical exercise is good for some things, but spiritual discipline holds benefit for all things, for this life and the life to come." So what was it? Well, in the context of what Paul was writing in 1 Corinthians, it had to do with our moral actions. Are we using our bodies morally the way that they were intended, or are we running around and doing whatever we can to bring pleasure to ourselves? Now, it's not that God doesn't want you to have pleasure. He created you that way, but there's a purpose. One man, one woman, married till death do you part. That's his point. All right, so chew on that and think about how you're treating the temple and how that reflects to the outside world. Are you living in such a way that people are going to want what you have? Or are you living in a way that people are going to say, "You're no different than me"? All right, we'll talk to you next time.